At 5:58 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the counter beside a half-finished cup of coffee. I was reaching for the mug when the notification preview stopped me cold. Effective immediately. Lydia Carver is placed on administrative suspension pending investigation into financial misconduct. Sent by my father, Edmund Carver, addressed to senior staff. Sent accidentally to everyone. I opened the email and read it twice. Not because I was confused, but because the tone was familiar. Crisp, accusatory, surgical. The way my father communicated whenever he wanted something done without dirtying his hands. A few seconds later, another email followed this one from Rowan, my younger brother. Just stay quiet until Dad fixes it. Then, a second. Also, we need you at the estate by noon. I stared at the screen. Rowan had never written a full sentence to me in his life unless it benefited him. The faux concern irritated me more than the suspension itself. I took a slow sip of coffee. Bitter, cold, still better than the taste forming at the back of my throat. Helena, my mother, broke the silence with a call. I let it ring, and her voice spilled into voicemail. Lydia, do not overreact. Your father only meant this as a procedural message. You know how legal language works. Just come in and act normal until we smooth things over. Act normal. Smooth things over. I had spent 6 years smoothing over their disasters, funneling my own savings into the vineyard every month, making sure our carefully staged prestige never cracked in public. A fourth notification blinked, from Edmund himself. We will discuss your role when you arrive. Not a single word acknowledging what he had just broadcast to the entire company. Not a single word acknowledging that every inch of the Carver estate still stood because I kept paying fees he avoided, balancing debts he denied, stitching together a business he pretended to command. I closed the emails, pushed the mug away, and breathed in the quiet of my apartment. If you are listening right now, tell me where you are and what time it is for you. I want to know who's here with me at the moment everything started to shift. Because this cold morning, these careless messages was the moment I stopped being their solution, and the moment they started becoming my consequence. By the time I reached the estate later that morning, the staff avoided my eyes the way people do when they are afraid of choosing the wrong side. Rowan appeared first, leaning in the doorway of the tasting room, arms crossed like a model posing for a lifestyle ad. He gave me a tight smile. You should not have ignored the emails. Dad is furious. I did not ignore them, I said. I read every word. Rowan scoffed. Then act like it. You walking around here calmly is making things weird. There it was, the Carver method. My emotional control was the problem, not their public humiliation of me. Before I could respond, Helena swept in, pearls clicking softly against her blouse. Lydia, she said quickly, your father wants you in his office. And please, try not to escalate things. Today is already delicate. Delicate, I repeated. Because of the email he sent, Helena stiffened. Because people are talking. We cannot feed rumors. Maybe we should address the source instead of the whispers, I said. Her eyes flashed in warning. Do not take that tone. Your brother is under tremendous pressure preparing the new marketing push. This suspension has complicated everything. Rowan lifted a brow like he agreed wholeheartedly. Yeah, Lyd. You really timed this badly. I stared at him. You are calling my suspension bad timing. He shrugged. It affects the brand. There it was, the family creed. Rowan was the brand. I was the mechanism that kept it functioning. Edmund's voice carried down the hall before he appeared. Both of you, stop wasting time. Then his gaze landed on me, sharp, appraising. Lydia, my office. Now. No greeting. No explanation. Only command. I followed him down the narrow corridor, each step pressing deeper into the role I had played my entire life until today. Edmund closed his office door with a sharp click, then stood behind his desk as if he needed the height advantage. "We will handle this situation internally," he said. "Your suspension is temporary. Based on what I asked." His jaw tightened. An inconsistency in the financial reports. I let out a breath. Name one. Silence. He had not reviewed a ledger in years. But acknowledging that would shatter the authority he relied on. Helena entered quietly, folding her hands in front of her. "Lydia, your father is simply trying to protect the vineyard. A formal review looks responsible. Then why broadcast it to the entire company I asked?" Edmund exhaled impatiently. "Because leadership requires decisiveness. If there is even a perception of mismanagement, we act quickly." I stepped closer to the desk. "For 6 years, I have kept this place alive. I have paid vendors when our cards declined. I have negotiated loan extensions. I have covered operational gaps with my own savings. You know that." His eyes flickered annoyance, not gratitude. "You made choices without consulting us. That is the issue. Those choices kept the lights on," I said, pointing at a folder on the corner of his desk. Edmund replied. The accountant flagged discrepancies. "That is enough for an internal suspension." I recognized the folder. It held outdated printouts of the operating budget numbers that meant nothing without the full context. "You do not understand the system well enough to accuse me of abusing it." Helena stepped closer, her voice softening in a way that always felt like manipulation disguised as care. "Darling, do not make this antagonistic. Everyone has their role. Rowan handles public image. Your father oversees executive decisions. You ensure operations run smoothly. That balance works." "It works for you," I said quietly. "Not for me." Edmund's expression hardened. "Until this review is resolved, you will have no access to financial systems. And you will not speak to staff about this matter." There it was. Not a suspension and erasure. I straightened, no longer feeling small. "If you are locking me out of the systems," I said, "you should be prepared for what happens when they stop running." Neither of them replied. They had built their kingdom on my quiet labor, and now they were severing the only thing holding it upright. I drove back to Portland with the windows cracked, letting the cold air steady me. By the time I reached my apartment, every muscle in my body felt tight enough to snap. I set my bag down, opened my laptop, and stared at the login screen for the vineyard's financial system. Edmund's words echoed in my mind. "You made choices without consulting us. That is enough for suspension. Your role is operations. Nothing more." I typed in my credentials. Access denied. They had already locked me out. My phone buzzed. Tessa Marwick's name lit up the screen. "Tell me you are not still at the estate," she said the moment I answered. "I left." I replied. "They suspended me." Tessa muttered something sharp under her breath. "Then it is time to run the contingency plan." I stayed quiet. She had warned me 3 years earlier to protect myself, to prepare documents in case the family decides you are easier to blame than to appreciate. I had rolled my eyes, believing even the Carvers had limits. They sent an email to the entire company. I said, "What did it accuse you of financial misconduct?" Tessa laughed, short and humorless. "You are the only reason their numbers have not imploded. Did you open the safe?" I had not. My gaze drifted toward the closet. "Not yet. Lydia," she said more softly, "you cannot keep saving people who would rather watch you burn than let you stand beside them. Open the safe." I crossed the room, knelt, and spun the dial of the fireproof safe. Inside were the documents Tessa had insisted I draft the withdrawal of my personal guarantee, the formal resignation as the managing operator on our state liquor license, and a summary of every instance where my personal funds covered operational shortfalls. "They will accuse you of abandonment," Tessa said. "But you are not abandoning the vineyard. They removed you. You are responding accordingly." I laid the documents on the table. If I pull my guarantee, the bank will freeze the credit line. Good, Tessa replied. Let them run their own business for once. I opened the online banking portal and navigated to the guarantee settings. A red warning box appeared. Are you sure you want to revoke liability? This action cannot be undone. My fingers hovered. Memories flooded in Edmund tearing up my university acceptance letter at 19. Saying Rowan needed the investment more. Helena telling guests I was more administrative than creative. Rowan calling me the back-end mule when he thought I could not hear. I clicked. The screen refreshed. Personal guarantee removed. Credit facility under temporary review. A second form waited on my laptop, the liquor license resignation. I signed it, uploaded the required screenshot, and submitted it through the state portal. The status updated to pending regulatory review. Tessa exhaled on the other end of the line. It has begun. It has, I said, for the first time in years. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, not collapsing, just changing, and I did not step back to catch it. I let it move. By the next morning, my phone had become an alarm system for other people's panic. Helena called first. Lydia, the bank is not letting your father access the operating account, she said. Breath tight. You need to explain what you did. I followed procedure. I replied, do not be childish. We have payroll tomorrow. I ended the call. A text from Rowan arrived seconds later. Fix this. You are tanking our reputation. Not the vineyard. Not the business. Our reputation. Before I could respond, an email came through from my father with a single sentence. You have jeopardized everything we built. I almost laughed. I ignored it and answered the call from Tessa instead. Good, she said without greeting. You are going to want to sit down. What now? I was filing your resignation with the state board, and something flagged on the record. A pending lien search. I pulled the associated documents. Her voice shifted colder, measured. Your parents have been in acquisition negotiations for months. The buyer is Stonebridge Estates. The name hit me like a physical strike. Stonebridge was a global luxury conglomerate. They did not acquire failing vineyards unless the brand image carried value. What is the offer? I asked. $14.6 million. She replied, but it gets better. The sale depends on you staying as transition director for 18 months. No equity, no bonus. Salary only. My grip tightened on the phone. They planned to fire me just long enough to strip my claim. I said, yes, Tessa answered, and once the ink dried, they would have pulled you back in as an employee. Not an owner, not a partner, an expendable tool. I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle in its final shape. Every sacrifice, every late night, every personal deposit converted into a payout I was never meant to touch. They sent that suspension email to make the buyer think I was the problem, I murmured. They tried to turn you into a liability, Tessa said, so they could cash out. A silence stretched between us before she added, so what do you want to do? Lydia. I opened the acquisition file, scanning the lines that attempted to erase me. Notify Stonebridge. I said, send them the material change notice. Include the license review and the credit freeze. Tessa's exhale held something like satisfaction. I will send it immediately. The call ended. I stared at the screen. They had tried to sell the vineyard. They had tried to sell the future I built. They had tried to sell me. Not anymore. By the evening of the harvest gala, the estate felt wrong in a way I had never experienced. The usual hum of preparation had been replaced with sharp voices and half-whispered arguments. I had not planned to attend, but I needed to collect the last of my things from my office before Edmund decided to lock me out of the building entirely. When I pulled into the gravel lot, a catering manager stood beside her truck with her arms folded. We cannot unload, she said to a cluster of staff. Your payment bounced twice. Rowan stepped out from the tasting room, dressed in a tailored suit meant to look effortless. It did not. He looked rattled. Just stall the guests. He snapped at a server. "Everything will be fine once Dad handles the bank." The server hesitated. "We also cannot pour wine tonight. Mr. Carver, the license is under review." Rowan turned sharply toward her. "Who told you that? The distributor?" she said. "They received a notice this afternoon." His eyes swept the courtyard, then landed on me as I stepped out of my car. "You did this," he said immediately. "You sabotaged our biggest night of the year." I walked past him without slowing. I informed the appropriate parties of a regulatory change. "You tanked the license," he hissed. "You removed the designated operator." I replied, "The consequences belong to you." Helena intercepted me near the entrance. Her smile was brittle, frantic at the edges. "Lydia, please," she whispered. "We have donors here, press, investors. Help us get through the evening, and we can fix the rest privately." "There is nothing to fix privately," I said. "The systems are responding exactly as they should." Behind her, Edmund appeared. His voice cut through the air. "We will talk inside. Inside." The word meant containment, control, silence. I looked at him, then at the guests milling in confusion, and finally at the staff scrambling to keep the illusion from collapsing. "I am only here," I said, "to retrieve my belongings." For the first time in my life, I saw fear flicker across Edmund Carver's face. The night was breaking open, and he knew exactly why. Edmund led the way into the barrel room, the door slamming behind us with a hollow echo. Helena followed, gripping her clutch as if it were the last piece of stability she had left. Rowan closed in last, blocking the exit. Edmund didn't waste time. "You are going to undo whatever you did to our accounts." "I did not do anything to the accounts," I said. "I revoked my personal guarantee." The bank followed its own protocols. Helena stepped forward, voice trembling. "Lydia, we cannot have the credit line frozen tonight. There are guests outside expecting a celebration." "Then tell them the truth," I replied. "Tell them the vineyard cannot operate without the person you suspended in a public email." Rowan scoffed. "You love acting like a martyr. Always the wounded genius." I met his eyes. "You think this is theatrical? Ask the staff who cannot serve a single glass of wine. Ask the caterers waiting for payments that bounced. This is not drama. Rowan, this is what happens when you treat responsibility like a costume." Edmund's voice sharpened. "Enough. Lydia, we have a buyer. An agreement. You jeopardized a $14 million acquisition." I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed contract. This one, Helena's face drained of color. Rowan's posture stiffened. Edmund didn't blink. I held the contract out between us. "You negotiated a sale that required me to continue running the vineyard for 18 months, with no equity, no compensation beyond salary, and no acknowledgement of what I built." Helena whispered. "It was strategic. We needed you positioned properly for the transition." "Positioned." My voice cracked on the word. "You positioned me as labor, not legacy." Rowan crossed his arms. "Do not twist this. We were protecting the family." I stepped closer. "Protecting yourselves, not the vineyard." "Not me." Edmund finally spoke, but the command in his voice had thinned. "If you walk away now, we lose everything." "You already lost it," I said. "You just did not feel the impact until tonight." Helena reached out, desperation breaking through her poise. "Lydia, please, help us fix this." I backed away from her hand. "You fired the operator. You erased the architect. Now you face the structure without its foundation." I walked past them toward the door. "Behind me," Edmund whispered so quietly it barely carried. "We never thought you would actually leave." I didn't turn around. They had built their kingdom on my silence. Tonight, my silence ended. The collapse did not happen with a single blow. It unfolded in waves, each one hitting harder than the last. 3 days after the gala, Edmund called me. I let it ring until voicemail. "Lydia," he said, voice strained. "The bank has issued a formal demand. They want immediate clarification on the guarantee. This is not sustainable. Call me back." I didn't. A week later, Helena tried. "You have made your point," she said, her breath uneven. "But Stonebridge will not resume negotiations until the license review is cleared. You can resolve this in an afternoon. Lydia, be reasonable." Reasonable. That word again, always meaning the same thing. Return to service. Rowan sent a final text. "They say the deal is dead. I hope you are satisfied. Not grief, not panic. Blame pure and simple." Meanwhile, Tessa kept me updated from a safe professional distance. "The bank review is escalating," she said. "Without the guarantee, they view the vineyard as too unstable to maintain the line. They will call the full amount by the end of the month." And Stonebridge, I asked. "They have withdrawn interest entirely." They cited governance issues, regulatory inconsistencies, and a compromised operational foundation. A polite way of saying the Carvers were not worth the trouble. Within weeks, staff began resigning. The vineyard's accountant quit first, leaving a short message: "I cannot manage liabilities I did not create." Several longtime field workers followed. Without operational funds, equipment maintenance halted. Distributors placed the Carver estate on indefinite hold. 45 days after the gala, Edmund and Helena liquidated their last major asset, the bottling line. They sold it to a competitor for a fraction of its value. They moved out of the estate, Tessa told me one evening. A small rental outside Salem. I nodded, not out of satisfaction, but something heavier. The vineyard was dying, piece by piece, in the very silence they once demanded from me. I set my phone down and looked out at the city lights of Portland. The air around me felt steady, unburdened. For the first time in years, nothing in my life required rescuing. Almost 1 year later, I drove through the Willamette Valley on a quiet Sunday morning. The land that once held the Carver Estate vineyards was unrecognizable. The gate was gone. The tasting room had been leveled. A construction crew marked out foundations for a row of modern homes. All that remained of my family's legacy were a few wild vines climbing the old fence line, stubborn and unpruned. I parked at the ridge overlooking the property. The air was cool, still. I had not come to relive anything, I had come to release it. My phone buzzed. A message from Tessa. "You close on the new office next week. Proud of you." I smiled. The sustainable beverages startup I had joined in Portland had just completed a valuation that placed us near $40 million, not because of my last name, not because of obligation, because of work that was finally seen. I stepped out of the car and set a small canvas bag on the hood. Inside was the last bottle I kept from the Carver years, a 2017 Reserve Pinot I had crafted myself, before anyone thought my hands were capable of anything worth remembering. As I uncorked it, a car pulled up beside mine. Helena stepped out slowly, her posture smaller than I remembered. I did not move toward her. She looked at the torn hillside, then at me. "Your father thinks you hate us. I do not hate anyone," I said, "but I am done being used." She nodded once, a brittle acceptance. "We were wrong about you. You were wrong about yourselves," I replied. "I simply stopped carrying the weight of it." She had no answer. After a moment, she returned to her car and drove away. I poured a single glass from the bottle. The wine tasted young, imperfect, but undeniably mine. If you are still listening, tell me where you are and what chapter of your own story you are standing in. I want to know who is here at the moment you choose yourself. I raised the glass toward the valley, toward the ruins, toward what survived despite them, to endings that free us. I whispered. I drank, and the weight I had carried all my life finally loosened from my hands.